different things, that we were not doing prior. It was just fun to do.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, things didn't get bad for the blacks until they started that so-called civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. The worst thing.
Wait, why is it so called? Wait, why is it a so-called civil rights movement?
Because there is no such thing as civil rights. And the worst thing that ever happened to the blacks, other than abortion, was the civil rights movement.
That was the worst thing that happened to the blacks?
Why are there no, let's back up. So why are there no civil rights? Let's start there.
Because those are just words. What does that even mean?
Well, I think what you said before, once the government, so when you have government instituted racism, that's not cool. So when the government stopped institutionalizing or making laws that are racist, systemic, blatant, let's say, that's better.
It's just making the idea that like you
by law can't drink in a fountain
black
or whatever.
man
It's crazy.
can't be discriminated against legally is like the goal of the civil rights movement is some legal protections.
No, the goal of the civil rights movement
was
to control the blacks. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, other people. They wanted to control the blacks for their own personal gain. Mm-hmm. They wanted wealth and power. And the way they did it, they made blacks think that, you can't make it. The white man holding you back. Look at this. And so listen to us. And so especially in Montgomery, Alabama, and other areas, the blacks sold their souls over to the civil rights leaders. And they sold them to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And if you notice, the blacks have gotten worse instead of getting better because they're no longer individual, free-thinking people. They're enslaved to their leaders. They're enslaved to the government. They now don't have fathers and mothers in their homes because they have no sense of self-control. They don't even know what it means to be an individual thinker. Thinker anymore? Not all, but most.
Most
they
black
have
people?
Lost, right, most black people.
Wow.
They have lost that sense of individuality and responsibility.
How do you think you remedy that? Like, what's the solution?
By being honest, not judging, not hating, not being angry at, but just tell them the truth. You're never going to be free until you become an individual again. Mm-hmm. What made America so amazing is that we were individuals. We made our own decisions. No one had to tell us who to vote for. No one tell us, and like the so-called civil rights leaders, they told the blacks to vote for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because they wanted power and wealth for themselves, and they were the leader of the blacks.
So how do you look at, like, let's say a Martin Luther King Jr.?
He was a socialist. Mm-hmm. He was a communist. He used blacks for his own personal gain.
Really?
Yes. He was a mess.
He was a mess.
He was a mess. Well, I always thought it was interesting when black people became Republicans, right? Because you were like, the Republican Party doesn't like black people historically. But then there are black Republicans, right, like in Atlanta. So what do you think about that? Should they be Republicans then?
Originally, the Democratic Party didn't like the blacks. Blacks were not allowed to be a part of the Democratic Party. And that's why the Republican Party was formed. It was formed by blacks and whites. And that's why in the good old days when boys were boys and men were men, you had black Republican representative congressmen, men working this thing, right? So it was the Democratic Party, but the so-called civil rights movement lied to the blacks and said it was the Republican Party. And so the blacks stopped thinking for themselves, and they moved into the Democratic Party, and now they're being controlled.
What are we going to do about this?
It was
Yeah,
the
what do we do?
Republican
What are we
Party.
going to do about